No, I hear you. I did the same thing. Okay, awesome. Hi. Hi. Well, thank you all for being here.
Back. We opened up the door, there's so many people in here.
I know.
Well, thank you guys. You guys have made it all the way to the end, basically.
That's right, this is the
Hopefully
end.
not our careers.
No, far from it. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know why you're here. The gentleman to my right, Michael Bell, Dan Gilvezan. This is a quick discussion about voices and the iconic characters that they played.
Hey, let me ask you, would you guys mind, I know you love to be where you are, but would you mind moving up, then we can all get a little closer?
I'll just kind of
Yeah, come on up so we can hear you
Wouldn't you
better.
feel terrible if they got up and left because we
No, because then we could go. I'm just kidding. There you go. Thank you for doing that, because then there we can see you. Oh, look at how handsome
Because
you
you're going
are.
to ask some questions, we want to be able to hear you.
Yeah,
Oh
exactly.
yeah, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, okay. Thank you for doing that. Look and see. Don't order me around, they said. I'm a free agent. Okay.
Great. So thank you guys for doing this. I know you guys had a good show so far. It's
Yeah, it's been great.
awesome. Well, so you guys are known for basically most iconic G.I. Joe and Spider-Man. Those are two very divergent worlds. So basically, I want to know from each of you, how did you get your roles?
Mr. Bell, would you care to begin?
Well, I first disrobed. And they said, no, we'll give you the part anyway. I went out and auditioned, like all of us do. What you do is you all go out and they've got prototype drawings of the characters. And generally let you pick one or two and give the best audition you can give. And then you wound up a couple of days later, if you're fortunate that you've got a particular role, and that's it, and you go in and you're prepared for it. In terms of G.I. Joe, though, there were so many characters in the Transformers, so many characters. After a while, they just doled them out like cards and said, okay, you're playing this character, you're playing this character, this is your next character. But in the beginning, you audition for that particular character. You have to figure where they came from, how deep is your voice, what do they look like, so that you can give the best character, the best performance you can give for that character. That's basically what you're going to do.
Dan, how did you get Spider-Man?
For me, yes. Well, Spider-Man was my first job, and it was really. I was talking to Alan Oppenheimer in the other room about the luck factor in this business, and a lot of what we do is based on luck, being in the right place at the right time. Yes, you have to have the goods when it comes down to it, but a lot of it is just pure happenstance. And my very first job in animation was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and that was a big job. I'd never done animation before. But I was fortunate to have Frank Welker on one side of me and Kathy Garver on the other side of me, and I learned a lot from just watching those two. But once again, as Michael said, it was an audition process. You go to the first audition, and there's 100 people reading for the part, and then if they're interested in you, you have a call back. You come back a second time, and there may be 25 people still reading for the part. And I think we had a third call back, and there were probably 5 people that they were looking at for Spider-Man. They did what they call a mix and match, and this is the hardest part of this business. You sit in the waiting room, and there may be 5 Icemen, 5 Fire Stars, and 5 Spider-Men, of which I was one. They would go, okay, we want Barry, Linda, and Dan come in for the first group. And then they would read those people. The assistant will come out into the room and go, okay, Barry just came out. We want to replace Barry with Phil. Phil, would you go in and do the Iceman part? And they do a mix and match to see what sounds best. The thing that you never want to hear is, okay, Phil, you can go, because that means that you're out of the running. So every time that assistant comes out into the room, everyone is like, God, don't say my name. Don't say my name. And I was fortunate, as I said, to when after all the dust smoke cleared, it was Frank Welker, Kathy Garver, and myself. But it's once again, as Michael said, it's the auditions, and it was the same thing with Transformers for the main characters. I read for Bumblebee, and I read for several other characters, like Starscream, and of course Chris Latta was brilliant at it, so he got that. But It's having the goods, and it's studying the character designs, and they'll have a description of sort of maybe the background of that character, and you have to kind of put that all together, and then work with the director and find a voice for that character. And hopefully it's something that the producers will think works.
And how rewarding is it for you both to see how pop culture has sort of embraced the voice actors more now for these iconic roles that you guys have played? Because when you guys were doing this initially, you know, there's no Twitter, there was no pop culture landscape. So how rewarding is it for you now to be able to?
In my case, there was no computer. Never mind Twitter. I was lucky if I understood how a Victrola worked.
You cranked that.
I cranked that. It's very exciting to have the fans, and we have new fans, which really surprised me when there's new, you know, the fans of my age category and maybe a little bit younger. That's expected, but really young fans that come up to the table and say, "Wow, I'm such a fan," and why aren't you watching the latest whatever? No, that's not great. What's great is Transformers and G.I. Joe and the shows of yesteryear, because there were stories and there were characters you could identify with. There was good and there was evil. There was nothing in between. And now, of course, it's totally different. So it's great for all of us, I think.
I agree. Same thing. It's the computer and that the social media that's really caused that to happen. And as Michael said, it's amazing to see, like, you know, some 8-year-old kid go, you like Transformers? I'm a G1 fan, you know, because there's been Beast Wars and there's been the Bay movies and all that stuff, but I like the G1, and that's great to hear, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I never knew what G1 meant for the longest time. People say, I'm a G1 fan, and I think, I never did that show. What the hell is G1?
I mean, yeah, back then it was Transformers. Yeah. So now, you know, when you talk about the new fans and sort of wondering why they're not seeing the newer version of these things or the newest thing, so when you look at how these characters have been translated to film and other mediums, what do you think of those interpretations?
Are we going to go there? Should we go there?
Is Michael Bay in the audience?
Yeah. Anybody?
No, Michael Bay. I have it on good authority. Is not in the building right now.
Okay. Are there any kids in the audience?
Yeah. You might want to hold back on that kind of
Okay.
stuff.
Tier 1 swearing.
Plug their ears.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, well, you know what? The Bay movies are just a different animal. That's all it is. And you can like them or not like them. A lot of the G1 fans, you know, detest them. Yeah, we're getting thumbs down over here. Because that's not our show. You know, our show had a lot more heart. Our show had humor. There was a lightness to it. Even though there was a lot of battles and stuff going on, there was sort of there was more of a gentility to it, I think, than the Bay movies. I started to watch the first one, and after about 20 minutes, I started to get a headache. It was like somebody was hitting me in the face with a frying pan for a half an hour. And I mean, the CGI was amazing to see these huge robots, and that was great. But it wasn't our show. That's his thing, and that's fine. You know, if you like that, that's great. Oh, apparently they liked it because they didn't. Well, so I'm sorry, girls. I really. I love you anyway. I'm sorry, but you know, but each iteration, Beast Wars was a different thing, and Rescue Bots were a different thing. They were all sort of different flavors, and that's fine. You know, it's whatever floats your boat, basically, right?
Floats my boat, yeah. No, I had called when we were first planning the first Transformers, Michael Bay, and because I heard his assistant was on radio, and they said, do you plan to use any of the original voices? And he said, where we can, we will, when the characters come up. It really depends, but we are interested in talking to the original voices, so I thought, I'll call. So I called, and I made contact, and I spoke to the guy, and I forgot what his name was, and he said, oh, wow, I'm such a fan, and we're fans, and we watched the show, and I watched the show, and I love your characters, and blah, 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 etc. And no, none of your characters are in. And I said, oh, because you knew all my characters. And I said, well, the other characters, I'm sure there'll be some of them from the other guys. Well, we don't know yet, we're not sure. And I said, well, let me make a suggestion. If you don't use them as the voices, how about using all of us who are still above ground as extras in the film? A little cameo, you know, somebody sitting on a bench, or some guy saying, you know, whatever the heck it is, or somebody in a coffee shop, or a guy selling at a newsstand. He says, well, look at that. And then we'd all be, so it'd be Jack Angel, and Dan, and myself, and all the guys would be part of this. And that way, because you need extras anyway, you're going to need, we don't normally do this, but we are actors, and we can say one line easy enough if you're worried about it. And he said, no. So I said, okay, it's nice talking to you.
I mean, you tried, and I mean, you know, you were trying to be.
It would be great for the fans.
Yeah, it would have been great for the fans. I mean, you know, Marvel led the way with Stan Lee being in all those things.
I know. I got out of my car about, I think it must have been 8 months ago at a market in LA, and this family got out, and this father got out, and he said, hey, and I said, yeah, and he said, are you Stan Lee?
Oh my God.
I said, do I look friggin' 98 years old? He said, well, I just cut with your hat and the way. I said, no, I'm not Stan Lee. I went home, don't think I didn't look in the mirror a lot.
You didn't even try to just do the impression right there?
No way. You got $80? You want a picture?
So, for you guys, when you first got these parts, when you were auditioning and going through the process, was this something that was just sort of, as actors, this was something to make a paycheck, or were you genuinely invested in these kind of animation?
It was a job. And the nice thing about it was a 65 episode series. And for an actor, that kind of steady income is something that you really, really crave. So this was a sweet, sweet job. And yes, it was very much about the money. It was about paying the bills. It was about, you know, buying groceries and paying your rent. Yes, we were invested in the characters because as an actor, you sort of have to become a little bit in love with the character you're doing in order to pay it justice. But and we've said this many times before, it was a job, and we were happy to have it. We had no idea it was going to have the kind of legs that it has, that you guys would come, 35 years later and still be into this. We had no idea.
What's interesting is because we're actors, people assume we have choices. If you're not a superstar who's worried about their reputation, you don't have a choice. You take just about any job that comes your way. Usually the on-camera actor or actress who says, well, I turned down that role, which became a great role and won an Academy Award for somebody else, and boy, do I feel bad, but I didn't really, associate with that character. I didn't feel that character would be somebody I could get into. That's them. They can do that. Often people say to me, did you ever turn down a role? I look over my shoulder and I'm wondering who they're talking to. Turn down a role? Are you serious?
Yeah, well, you know, we were working stiffs. I mean, that's who we were. We were in the trenches every day. That's who we were. And and I'll say this, we were fortunate to be able to make a living because there are scads of other people who got back on the bus after spending a year in LA and not being able to get anything happening. So I feel blessed, I know Michael does too, that we were able to make actually a very nice living for the last 30 some odd years doing this show. But you're right, we were the working stiffs. We weren't the stars. We weren't the Brad Pitts and the Angelina Jolies. We were the guys in the trenches, working every day and auditioning every day and hopefully getting that job so that you could put food on the table and continue to work and have health insurance, which we got through our unions.
And I'm one of the few actors I can say, I think at least at that time, that had an on-camera career. I was guest starring in a number of television shows. I was under contract to Universal Studios because I had big ears. And I was hot for that. I mean, I'd get scripts and then I had to read for it those days. They just come to the door and they say, next week you're doing Ironsides or whatever it is, and I do several of those and something else, and Streets of San Francisco and etc. And I was guest starring in a lot of stuff, and I realized that it's hard because you could do that for a solid year, maybe 2 years, then all of a sudden you're old news. And you may not get that following year, you may not get the kind of work you were getting, And somebody I was going with, Joni Gilbert, who was one of the top voice ladies in the business, said, why don't you get into voiceover? Because you do all these characters, which you'll never get to play on screen. You'll always be a heavy. You'll always be the bad guy or somebody's husband who gets killed in the first half hour. So I said, well, I'll certainly give this a shot, and got to work immediately with Mel Blanc, that was it. And I said, okay, called up to Universal and said, yeah, I don't want to take a contract for next year. Say goodbye.
Well, and as you pointed out, you were doing these shows for 65 episodes at a time. So there had to have been, was there a moment where, in the recording process, reading these scripts, where you looked at these characters and were like, okay, yeah, this is good. I can do this. This is me. I can put myself in this.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
As I said, there's nothing that we didn't say no to.
Yeah.
And sometimes, by the way, sometimes you would, as I remember Wally, a couple of times our director, Wally Burr, rest his soul, had said, Mike, do this. And I'll read the thing and say, okay, Dan, you do it. And there was no ego.
No.
It was fine. I mean, it was so great to say, yeah, Dan can do that, we'll let Dan do it, or, you know, whomever. I don't care who it is, because there's plenty for us to do. We were all at the same watering hole. No water was deeper than anybody else's or cleaner than anybody else's. We were happy. When I did a soap opera, and then I would walk over to somebody and say, can we work on this scene? He said, I can't. I fix my hair. It's about hair and makeup. No, it is not. No, trust me. Voiceovers, we dropped our egos at the door. It was fabulous.
Yeah, it was everybody was in it for not only themselves, but for the entire group. I think that's kind of what was happening, and we were all hoping to make, I've said this before, I said this at the panel the other day, that working with these guys made me better. You know, brought my game up, because I had to come up to their game. So we would feed on one another in that same way. So it just became, and to this day, we're still friends. It's almost like, you know, you have that shared experience where you're in the trenches together in the Army, and you never forget that person. It's a little bit like that. I mean, when I see Alan, or I see Michael, or I see, you know, Greg, or any of these guys, we were in it together. It's like, hey, how are ya? You know, we're almost like a little family. Because
anybody out there interested in voiceover? Doing voiceover work? Oh, I know, I see. Oh, there. Spies, there they are. Okay, what are you doing about it?
Did you call the 800 number to become a voice actor?
800, what is it?
Come on, talk to me. Did you call the 800 number? Did you? Okay, let me
there's an 800 number?
Yes, there is.
I should call it.
According to some of your other peers, it's just an 800.
For those of you who are interested in voice animation, if you go to YouTube, go to Michael Bell's voice animation class. I posted a class. I taught the groundlings, young groundlings. These are improv actors that never did voices. They wanted to learn. I said, okay, 5 of you guys. I got a studio. I rented a studio. Did all the good stuff. I said, and I'm going to take you through it, and I'm going to film it. And I filmed it, and I said, I'm going to post this on YouTube so everybody can get a chance to see how to build a character, how to create it. What mic skills you're going to need. You know, you need certain techniques, etc. Levels of voice, and what you need to do. Studying acting, all the things. I give them all these cues. And so if you're interested, just go to YouTube, Michael Bell Voice Animation Class. It's free. There's no charge.
Oh, look at you doing a public service. That's awesome. So before, I want to get to your guys' questions, but I just want to know, Dan, favorite Bumblebee?
Some of my best friends are humans.
Nobody was recording that. You were thinking.
Oh,
You got it. Thank you. Michael, favorite line, favorite Duke?
Yo, Joe.
I saw it coming.
It's a simple thing to write on an autograph. So that's good. Perfect. Do you guys have any questions?
Of all the characters that you performed, which would you say, this is my best performance, my best character? A character that best represents you as an actor.
You can say Spider-Man, Dan.
For me, I'm going to say for Rugrats, Chucky's dad, Chaz. I think because of the way it was written, there were so many levels to the character and so many emotional moments that gave me, as an actor, an opportunity to work, to really dig a little deeper than I normally would, or that I was normally imposed to dig, because most of the stuff is usually screaming at the top of your lungs or something. So this was perhaps the greatest opportunity between Chucky and Chucky's dad, Chaz, and Grandpa Boris, the Jewish grandpa, so I could make my grandpa come alive again. That for me is an actor.
I'm going to go a little bit out of left field. I was thinking, well, Bumblebee, I like that, but there was a show called The Legend of Prince Valiant, and I played the character Rolf, who was kind of Prince Valiant's sort of mentor. And he dies in the middle of the series, which I was not happy about. But playing that character where I was able to guide that young person was very, very fulfilling for me. And I was young at the time, but that was something that I felt very emotionally connected to, which not many people, because I don't think the show is in syndication, or I don't think it's out on DVD or anything. It was one season. It was 65 episodes, and I did probably 30 of them. But that for me was it was something about that caused an emotional reaction for me.
Do you have any other questions?
More questions, yes.
This is for Dan.
Can't hear you.
How did you get a role for Spider-Man 2099 from Shadow Dimension?
How did I get the role?
Yes.
This is they came to me. I don't know if you know, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions was a video game which was produced about 4 years ago, and they had 4 different Spider-Men in it. Classic Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2099, which is the one I did, and they wanted to have 4 actors who had voiced him in the past. So my agent just called me up and said they want you for this video game, and they want you to play Spider-Man. And I thought, oh great, because I hadn't done it in 30 years. And they said, but you're going to be Spider-Man 2099. And I had no idea who that was or what that was, so I had to quickly research it and see it. So that's one of the lovely things about this business sometimes. Sometimes things just fall into your lap, and that's what happened in that case. So there was no audition involved. It was just like, we'd like to use you.
And when you first did Spider-Man and Amazing Friends, you also were not too familiar with Spider-Man, only the TV version, right? Or were you?
Well, I had been a big fan. I mean, I used to, my bicycle broke when I was about 12 years old, and I would ride my sister's girl's bike to the local Rexall every month to get my copy of The Amazing Spider-Man. So I was a big fan as a kid. Oh yeah, I'm a comic book nerd. So when I got this role, I was like, wow, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, and I want to honor this part. And I think possibly because I was so familiar with that character, that may have been a factor in getting the role, because I understood a lot about the whole story behind him and who he was. So, no, I was a big fan, and continue to be.
Oh, that's awesome. And
and I think the new Spider-Man, Tom Holland, he's terrific, just the best. I think he's doing a terrific job. He's got that innocence, and that I can't wait to see Far From Home. It's going to be awesome. So, and they got Mysterio's going to be in there. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be good.
You're buying for a cameo in that one too?
They don't want me. They don't care. Yeah, I'm going to be sitting in the audience with the rest of the people paying $15 for the ticket.
So something I actually always wondered with voice actors that have the phone book level of credits that you guys had, what's the most obscure one that people recognize you for? Well, I'm going to tell you yours. I love Quacker Jack from Darkwing Duck.
Quackjack, yeah, I don't know if anybody, I don't know if I'm recognized for an obscure character. There's ones that don't. I did a huge creature that was like a giant mucus in humanoids. I never got to.
Remember any of those lines?
Yeah, one of them was.
You probably don't know this either, but I don't know if you recall, but Michael was the voice of Parquet Margarine for many years. He said a single word, and what was that word? Butter.
parquet.
What?
Yeah, and that was, tell us about the audition for that. How many people were up for that role? And you must have made a mint on that
It was
thing,
just
too.
a job. It was a job. The agent called me in and said they want you just to read for, along with other actors, one word. And you say butter, and then you say another word was parquet. And I go, okay. So do about 4 in a row. So you do butter, 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 parquet, 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 parquet. Thank you, Mike. Goodbye. And I left. And then they called me and said, you got that. And I said, okay, it was another job. I mean, I've done jobs where I've just had to go, timber, and did real well. And so I thought, it's just a job. And then it went, and it went, and it went, and it went. It was so great because afterwards people said, did you do well with it? And I said, well, I bought my house with it, which is called Los Residuales. And then I had to be on stage when they started to continue, I did a Laurel and Hardy one with, I think, Chuck McCann, I forgot the other actor.
Yeah.
I had to be on stage for them because I had to cue them. And then eventually I had to have a little piece of equipment that lifted the butter thing, so that the parquet thing, so that they could hear it at the same time and react to it. And then eventually I did one which was really silly. There was 2 little kids, and they were laughing because they were making breakfast for mom in the morning, and they were going to give her butter, and the thing goes, it goes butter, and they laugh. Well, to get children to laugh on cue is awful hard. And they couldn't, and they were going, it was half the morning was going by, and I said, let me do this. So I got under the table, these 2 little feet kicking, little patent leather shoes kicking, about to kick my head in. And they were just waiting, and I said, okay, roll it. And they rolled it, and I hear the dialogue, and as soon as it lifted, I went, cockapoo. They fell out of their chairs. They were laughing so hard. The first reaction when the kid hears cockapoo, they fell on the floor laughing. So the director said, that was gold. Can we do another one? I said, cockapoo, the second one. By the third one, I could feel the laughter was starting to dwindle because they were expecting. I went, poo-poo doody pee-pee. They fell on the floor. Well, come lunchtime, we had gold. I thought, I'm going to go home now. They said, we're going to get another half hour. We got another couple of hours in the afternoon. I said, oh my God, we've been there, guys. No, we want to do some more. I said, okay, fine. I couldn't think of any more words. And so the director came over, but I just spoke to one of the mothers who's at the other end of the studio, which is a big soundstage like this. She's at the other end. She doesn't like the idea that you're using that language in front of her daughter. One of the daughters. I said, oh, okay, well, you tell her I'm going to say, and whatever you have in your mind is what I say. I said, I'm going to say, and he said, you really want me to tell her that? So I said, yeah. So we went to the other end, and I see her all the way at the other end, and she's like this, waiting, because she's won. And he leans in her ear, and he says, Michael said he's going to say, she went, and she looked at me and went, I said, cockapoo for the rest of the afternoon. Whatever I wanted was fine, as long as I didn't say that.
All right, guys, we have time for one more question, so who wants it? Yes, over here. No, over here, you.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't even know how to go about asking it, but I was.
Yes, you can have a job.
What's that?
You can have a job.
You can have a job. Okay, I already have 3. I'm fine. I was told at a panel at Long Beach that at certain actors, like, they don't have a SAG card, that they can't even go into to do like auditions or even have like a chance to do anything.
They
So
don't have SAG card?
for a SAG card, is that true or not?
Yes, if it's a union job, yeah.
How
Yeah.
do you go about getting one?
Boy.
By the time you finish, you're going to have a beard.
Yeah, exactly. There are a couple of ways. I got my SAG card actually because I first had an AFTRA card. This is when AFTRA and SAG were 2 separate unions. I had done some radio commercials back in Washington, D.C. and got my AFTRA card, which was for radio work and videotaped, when shows were still videotaped. So they had a deal with AFTRA. If you had an AFTRA card, you could pay up front and get your SAG card. You have to get a SAG job in order to get a SAG card. There's a real catch-22. Yeah, it's kind of difficult. There's an apprentice program you can join, but generally you need to know somebody who will give you a SAG job in order to get your SAG card. It's very bizarre.
Okay.
right? Am I wrong? I mean, yes,
Yeah,
that's how it works.
And it's not how I got mine. It's not how a lot of us earlier got ours. I told the director of the film, he said, I want you for this film. He said, do you have a SAG card? I said, sure, absolutely. So he didn't check. And so they started the film, and I had 2 days in it, and he said, yeah, I called SAG. They can't seem to find your SAG card. I said, oh, I need a SAG card. Oh, that's what you meant. Okay, no, I don't have that. And he said, oh, okay, fine. So he went to SAG and got me my card. So a lot of us lied to get our SAG card in the early days. I'm talking the days of the chariot before the telephone.
So, do it the right way or lie to people. Yeah.
Or just like that. And we can do one.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, what role did you have the biggest disconnect? Like, you do something and people just look at you, what?
I did Voltron, and in Voltron, I had to, because I had the lightest voice, I think it was Peter Cullen and Lenny Weinberg and B.J. Ward, myself, and I think Neil Ross. Yes, Neil Ross. And I played Lance in Voltron, and Sven, but I had to do subsidiary voices, because they get you for 3 voices for the price of 1. So there were a lot of little kids and girls in the original Tokyo film. So BJ and I did little girls that were screaming and crying and yelling and running from monsters and often getting killed and stepped on. Well, years later, I am sitting now, this is probably what, 5, 6 years ago, I'm sitting with my daughter, 7 years ago, sitting with my daughter, watching television, and I went surfacing, and all of a sudden there was Voltron. I said, oh look, this old show's on, I think, and it was. And it just happened to come up at a time when the little girls were on screen. And all the little girls were screaming and crying, oh, please help me out, all that stuff. And my daughter turns to me, she said, is that you doing the little girl? So, because I thought I was so good, no one would know. And I said, yeah, it's me. And I didn't say anything. And then she turned, she said, you do little girl voices. And I said, yeah. And it paid for your college, so shut up.
I can't top that. I'm not going to follow that story. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for your time. Ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!